Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge. Let's talk horror. Today, I am so honored to announce that I have the directors of the upcoming film Hosts, which will be out on October 2nd on Amazon Prime. I have Richard Oakes and Adam Leader. How you guys doing today?
Yeah, we're doing really good, man. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. It's such an honor to have you guys here. Like I said, Hosts will be out October 2nd on Amazon Prime. What can you guys tell us a little bit about this film for the people that don't know about it yet?
Adam, you want to take that?
It's going to rock your world and terrify you, make you wish you never watched it.
I think it will shock a few people. I'm hoping so.
Yeah. And I want to get this out first. This is Hosts with an S. This is not the movie Host that is going around right now, because that was a confusion that had come up before. So this is Hosts.
Yeah, there is a confusion there. Like, yeah, it's slightly unfortunate, but the guys are doing really well. You see, they've just signed a deal with Blumhouse now, which is awesome. They've done really well with that, which is really cool. But it's a very different type of horror. Obviously, theirs is not found footage, but it's more that kind of paranormal activity kind of vibe, whereas ours is a little bit more of a cinematic, thing.
And Hosts will be out in a couple days. This will air just a little bit before October 2nd. Go down here. There's a trailer and a teaser down here in the description. Make sure you're checking it out. Make sure you're following these guys' social media, which is also down here. So with Hosts, how was you guys finished? You wrapped right before quarantine and COVID kind of took over, didn't you?
Yeah. It was really lucky with that. We shot most of it in April 2019.
May 2019.
Sorry, May 2019. We shot the majority of it then, but then we had to do some pickups, externals, but it had to be winter because it's a Christmas film. We were initially meant to shoot it in winter 2019 in January, but we had a bit of a delay and we ended up shooting later on, which was a bit of a pain for many reasons. The night shoots were a lot shorter than we scheduled for in January because we did all the scheduling, so that was a bit of a pain. But also it wasn't winter outside, so all the external shots we were trying to do, we did attempt it, but there was butterflies and flowers everywhere, and we were like, right, this isn't working. So we rescheduled it for the winter after, and we ended the shoot in end of January, and so it was about 4 weeks before kind of the UK lockdown, something like that.
It was a blessing in disguise, man. And I know. Just mentioning the whole COVID situation. Obviously, it's awful, and people die, and it's horrible, and it's really bad, and there's so many negatives to it. But us kind of having that time. Well, the timing was kind of perfect, to be honest, for having finished the film, and then being in lockdown and not having anything to do. Like, no one could work. So all we had was this film to sell, and it was just perfect timing, wasn't it, Rich? We got on the phone to, well, actually, I know the number, 174 different distributors, and just started setting up meetings over the conference calls over the phone and talking deals and stuff like that. And by the end of lockdown, we found the perfect, family to sign with for Host, and that's Dark Sky Films. And yeah, it was a blessing in disguise. So yeah.
And Dark Sky Films right now is putting out some awesome material.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, like 1BR's just been at #1 on Netflix. They're friends of ours. We got in contact with them during lockdown as well. I was just checking out Dark Sky's roster and seeing who's on there, and 1BR stood out to me, and got in contact on Facebook with David Marmon, and he's like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. He was just amazing. We were sharing advice and tips and all this type of thing, sharing industry secrets and little things like that, and we showed each other our screeners, and we were just like blown away by each other's work. And from then on, he introduced me to Alok, the producer, and we kind of got on really well, and they've been helping us out, and we've been kind of I don't know if we've helped them at all, but I'd like to think we have. But we've been sharing each other's stuff, and I feel like there's a little bit of a kindred spirit between us and 1BR, and they've done incredibly well. Their film is really cool, so check it out if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't seen it, I did have Alok, David, I had a bunch of them on the show as well. They're, like you said, they're great people. They're awesome to talk to. They're fun to be around. They have a great film. Clayton and Naomi came on, actor and actress from the film as well. So it was so much fun to be able to talk to all of them and really get to the bottom of what started horror for them as well. And with you guys now, hosts will be out. I'm going to keep promoting this October 2nd. Now, we were talking a little bit ago. We are going to be doing some physical media for hosts. As soon as you guys get any updates for that, please let me know so that way I can let everybody else know. This is something that I think you guys aren't going to want to miss. So when you see this trailer the same way I have, I think it's going to excite you just as much to watch and see what's going to be going on here. So, but we are here today to talk about the first horror movie that you guys ever watched, to see what really got you started in the genre. So, Adam, what was the first horror movie that you ever watched?
Well, the first ever horror movie that I ever watched was the original 1984 A Nightmare on Elm Street.
What a way to start, man.
Oh man, totally. That will always. Yeah, that was the first thing I ever watched, and that has a special place in my heart. That film.
Absolutely. Well, what about you, Richard? What was the first one that you ever watched?
Well, I'm going to say a bit of blasphemy here, and I'm going to say I still haven't watched Nightmare on Elm Street, and Adam still kicks me for it. Still haven't seen it. I watched the remake the other day, and that's even worse blasphemy.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, the good thing about you watching the remake first is it's going to really show you how great that the original one is, man. Because
I mean, Adam's shown me his favorite clips from the originals, and they do look awesome. So I need to do it at some point. I'm not very good at
practical effects from the original. They trump the CGI of the remake. The one that always comes to mind is the face through the latex. You know, in the original, that's such a powerful scene, and then in the new one, they did all the CGI with it, and it wasn't the same.
Yeah, I kind of don't want to watch the remake. You talking about the face in the latex when he comes through the wall when she's in bed? Yeah, that's like the thing. Like, I mean, I was going to mention this later, but the way. It's like it's 1984, man, and it was, which means it was probably shot in '83, and I still think some of the practical effects in that are incredible. You know, it's so ahead of its time. I think there are certain bits that aren't, you know, but the majority of it is, and I think it's amazing.
Well, and you talk about the practical effects from that movie. That's my favorite one. You know, the latex through the wall, because it's so simple, but it looks so damn scary. And then you got the waterbed scene, which is awesome. Tina getting drug up the wall when you never see Freddy in that whole scene. You know, Rod's Tina, and he's on the ground and she's getting drug on the roof, and you see her get cut open. Like, absolutely, that to me, and the budget that they had for that was not a big budget film by any stretch of the imagination. So those people worked extremely hard on that film to give us what we got.
Totally, man. Totally.
So, Richard, what direction are we going with you? Your first horror movie?
Well, I kind of got two, just because I feel like I was so young that I've got kind of very scatty memories of both. So to make it a bit more interesting, have a little bit more to talk about, I've got two. But I wanted to be honest rather than choosing the coolest one. I thought I'm going to be honest and tell you the actual two first ones I saw. And one was Arachnophobia. That was the first horror I can remember seeing, and I was 6 years old. It came out in 1990. And I remember going down to the video shop in my local town with the family. And I've got two older siblings, so they always wanted to watch. And they're quite a lot older. My sister's 7 years older than me. So she'd always want to get the horrors and stuff. And I was never allowed to watch it. But I got to this age when, and I think it's a PG, isn't it? So my parents kind of said, okay, you can watch this one. But I remember going, I don't know if you had it in the US, but in our video shops, we had these thin plastic sleeves with a little poster in it. And you flip through them like a filing cabinet. And that's what we had in our, and then you took that out and took it to the counter, and they'd take the video off the shop, like, you know, a bowling alley or something. That's how we used to have it. And I just remember these clicky things and seeing the cover for Arachnophobia. And we took it home and we watched it as a family. And I just remember having conjunctivitis really bad. So I couldn't, I was just having nightmares, but I couldn't open my eyes, and I had to try and make my way to the bathroom and wash my eyes out because they were just glued together. But I was terrified, and I had I just got arachnophobia from that, watching that, and it took me years.
We were at Richard's yesterday shooting something, and all of a sudden this massive spider walks across the floor, and all of us were just like standing there shaking. No one could sort it. It was huge, man, wasn't it?
Right.
But I got close to it, and I was trying my best, which was a lot better than how I used to be. You were like, "Ah!" So yeah, I was surprised.
That's awesome. So you said you had two. Arachnophobia is one. What's the other one?
The other one is The Blob. I can't remember what year it came out, but I just remember that was one of the first horrors I saw, and it was just amazing. I still want to show that to my kids. I'm trying to find a version of it. It's quite hard to find.
Sure.
But that was a remake. I think it's the remake I saw, because there was a black and white version, isn't there?
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen. But the remake, I loved it. It was just like, it had that proper 80s vibe, very neon-y colors, and kind of the leather jacket guy and all that kind of, all the tropes. I loved it. And the practical effects, again, like talking about that time, they're incredible. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, actually. I need to watch it again. So my memory of the actual scenes and stuff are a little hazy, but I've seen pictures of, articles of the best practical effects in cinema history of horror. And The Blob's always in there, because just how they did it was incredible. It was up there with The Thing and stuff like that.
See, to me, that's top five, because for me, the top five for me personally, not in any order, but you got The Thing, you got American Werewolf in London, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Blob, and then I'd probably go with Alien up there. I think Alien's a great one too. But to me, those top, anything that has great practical effects hooks me automatically.
I think Alien's my favorite horror film of all time, but it's not my first, so I'm not talking about
Right. Right. So, okay, well, I'm going to bounce. Usually I just ask one person every question, but since I got both of you here, I'm going to bounce the questions back and forth for you.
Yeah,
We're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, Adam. Which scene affected you the most and why?
Okay, so it's when it's the one where Tina's in school, right? And she's at the door. Nancy's in class, and the teacher gets one of the students to start reading something from the textbook, and all of a sudden, like, he just goes into this super ominous whisper as he's reading. So at that point, oh shit, man, like, Nancy's dreaming, like, this ain't cool. And Nancy, like, wakes up in class, and he's whispering away, and she looks to the door, and she just hears, "Nancy," and you see Tina there, just in this body bag, blood, standing there, and I remember loving it, like, absolutely. I just thought, this is incredible. I'm so glad that I found this tape. But I remember that night, like, not being able to sleep because I was terrified. And I remember my mum came into my room. She's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, I'm scared. It was that scene from A Nightmare on Elm Street. And she goes, "Well, you shouldn't have watched it then." And I was like, "Yeah, but it was so good, Mum." So I'm like kind of crying in fear, but crying with happiness as well, because I loved the film so much. But it was that scene. It was that scene that scared me the most, I think.
And especially with Nightmare on Elm Street, that's one of those movies where, I can't just go to bed and get away from it, because when I go to sleep, the fucker's going to come and get me.
Exactly.
It's such a clever concept. Like, it's so clever.
Yeah.
It's absolutely one of those things where they took the slasher genre to a whole new level with Nightmare on Elm Street. Because now, honestly, that's the only thing I liked about the remake, was in the remake they had the micro naps, where they just fall asleep and they don't even realize it. I loved that idea, because you couldn't just caffeine yourself up to stay awake. So that's one thing about the remake I was a big fan of. So while we're talking about scenes that affected us, when we're talking about arachnophobia, I want to go with that one first, Richard. Which scene from that movie do you think affected you the most?
I think it's a tough one with arachnophobia. I think the whole thing just gave me an ominous fear of spiders. I don't think there was any particular scene that scared me the most, but I remember the bit that gave me the heebie-jeebies the most, I guess, or made me go, "Oh my gosh," was the scene when they go into the old couple's house and they're watching TV with the popcorn. And then the spider comes out the popcorn, and then you realize they're both dead, and then the spider crawls out of his nose and across his face. Yes. And it was just like, just harrowing, with the TV light just flickering on them. That was pretty nasty. Like, I mean, the deaths in arachnophobia aren't too extravagant. Someone gets bitten in their slipper and then they just fall over. Like, it's not brutal horror as as you like, but it was, I guess it was that, because it's one of the first ones. It was between that and when they open the coffin and see the mummified, like drained guy that's been fed on for however long his journey back from wherever it was.
And that film's a PG, man.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be.
And I got to be honest with you. I think that we talked about this, Richard, but arachnophobia for the longest time, even to this day, before I put my shoes on, I shake them out just to make sure that that scene affected me so bad when I was a kid when the guy put his shoe on and then he just, he gets bit by the spider in his shoe.
Yeah.
So what about the Blob? What do you think from this which scene affected you the most from the Blob?
I'm getting muddled up with the questions here because there's the best kill as well, and a lot of the time they're kind of the same. The scene I found the best, I guess, my favorite scene. It's not necessarily the scariest. My favorite is I first time I watched it, I was terrified, and I was on my own. I was about 7 years old, and I was watching it, and I thought my parents were home and I finished, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified of this blob coming in and getting me. Mm-hmm. And I went out to tell my mum and that I was scared, and she wasn't home. And then I looked out, and the car's gone, and my whole family had gone out for the day while I was watching the Blob at 7 years old. And I was so scared. I lived on a farm, and I walked out into the middle of this big yard in front of my house, and so I could see in every direction whether something was coming after me. And I just cried. And I just stood in the middle of this yard until my parents came home crying. That's what I did. But then I watched it again. Like Adam said, it terrified me, but I loved it. And then my friends came over, and we put it on, and we kept rewinding this one scene because it was so funny. It was the date scene in the car, and the boyfriend's getting a bit fresh, and his girlfriend's kind of lying there in the passenger seat, and he's like, "Oh, it's a little hot in here, isn't it?" And he starts unbuttoning her blouse, and she's just chilling out, and he's like, "She's not reacting badly." Like, undoes another button. And then he shoves his hand down to cop a feel. And then this tentacle grabs his arm, and her face turns to him and then just collapses. And it's the funniest thing ever. And we just kept rewinding it because it's just so funny.
It's good. It teaches you to be a gentleman instead, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the typical, keep pure or you die, isn't it?
Yeah. Keep your hands to yourself or else a tentacle is going to come out and grab you.
But that was my favorite scene, I think, in the Blob. Not my favorite death scene, but it's my favorite overall scene.
Good, because that's one of my questions coming up. So yeah, we'll get to that one. Adam, when we're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, people start talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. What's the first thing that pops into your head when people start talking about Nightmare?
I guess it's probably being a kid and discovering something that would end up to be the catalyst for that hunger, to one day make me or make my own films, and after watching that, I remember I started getting super creative and putting on, I used to write these crazy stories in English class, in my textbooks, the textbooks that you do all your English homework in or whatever. I wrote this crazy elaborate story for English, and it was about Freddy, and it was my own version of Nightmare. And I just remember my teacher comes back to me after the weekend, and she's like, "Adam, I read your story." And it's like, "Oh yeah." and bear in mind, I was 8 years old, man. And she was like, she goes, "It was really good." I was like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah." But she says, the only thing that, that I'm going to have to mark you down on is, you said blood was squirgling out of her body. Squirgling isn't a word. And I was like, "Oh no, that's cool, man. Don't worry, but thanks." But yeah, it was that. I started writing all these crazy stories. And then I used to put on little plays to my grandparents, every time they came over, and just going nuts and getting involved in the Halloween festivities every year. And yeah, man, that's kind of what I remember, whenever that film pops into my head or I watch it, which I did recently. I watched it in lockdown. I played it to my girlfriend because she hadn't seen it before. So we got it on Prime Video and watched it, or YouTube rental. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, and it's just as good today, man, and as it was when I first watched it. I love it.
And I was going to ask you guys, I'll ask you both, Richard, if you want to knock it out first, the Blob and arachnophobia, how much do you think that those influenced you in what you're doing now in directing film, writing, producing? do you think that those films had an adverse effect on what you're doing now?
I think they must have done. I saw quite a few horrors. There's quite a few notable ones from my childhood. I loved things like Tremors. That was another one. I didn't see a lot of the like kind of hardcore horror until I was a bit older type of thing. I've got a little bit of a squeamish nature to me as well. Like I don't like it too. Like Adam's pure horror. I'm like, there's some places I just won't go. But
Sure.
I love a good story. But a lot of the horrors, including the Blob and Arachnophobia, kind of influenced me. Like similar to Adam, when I was 7 years old, I got bought a bike for my birthday, and I used to that same yard at the farm. I'd used to come home from school, grab my bike, ride around in circles, just occupying my mind, and just think of horror stories and think of horror film ideas that I wanted to make, but it was out of my reach to be able to do that. And I kind of
Sure.
over the years forgot about it, got into music and stuff, but I eventually came back to it, and it was cool because with the first money we got through for hosts, I bought a new bike to be able to just, you know, carry on that with my kids and go bike rides and stuff.
Right. It's awesome because another thing that we've talked about on this podcast a lot is talking about when you're talking about horror movies. I often compare it to drugs. You get that first high, and then you're always chasing that again. You know, you're chasing the dragon. And I feel that same thing with horror. The first time that you get that, oh shit, like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's always back there with you. It's something you always want. You always want to do that again. You always want that fear again because, yeah, it's scary, but it's also the adrenaline of it afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something that to me is just horror is above and beyond a genre. You know, it's almost a lifestyle to a point because I look at everything in my life as a horror movie sometimes, you know, especially with right now, what's going on. They're so easy to connect the dots between what's going on in our world right now and horror movie things. So to me, it's just so awesome listening to you guys who are big influences. And I wish the best for you here with hosts, you know, and hearing where it started for you guys is so fun for me because knowing where it's gone, you know, you would have never been here if it wasn't for Nightmare, The Blob, or Arachnophobia possibly. So without that start, we might not be having this conversation right now. So it's a whole lot of fun to hear how this started for you and how it affected you. And that's still fucking with me, man. My heart is racing right now. Like that really scares me. That was way too loud to be a poster falling.
That film is still affecting you.
It is, man. Like, that was my first horror movie, House, from 1986. So that's why that one's always there, man.
Nice.
Like you said, like, you know, the going all the way back to our influences, and I kind of feel like I don't feel like everything happens for a reason. I feel like everything that ever happens in your life obviously leads you to, takes you to where you end up, you know, where we are today. And like all those stuff, like I feel like kind of led me and Rich to each other, you know, which was way back in, well, not way back, but it was back in 2014 when we met. And all of a sudden, like, you know, a few years later, we're like, dude, let's write a horror film. Let's write and make a horror film. And, you know, the story just for that in itself, like the roller coaster of a ride that we've been on for the last, call it 2 years, you know, like it has been
2 years. Yeah. 2 years next month, isn't it? Well, 2 years in a month, November.
Yeah. Has been insane. And it's just the coolest story. I love it, man. Like, it's just so cool how we went from, you know, growing up, meeting each other, and then just, you know, having nothing in terms of, you know, being filmmakers and directors or whatever to now. And it's just awesome, man. Like, it's just great. It's just great. Like, the amount of stuff we've done and what we've gone through and in the last couple of years has been unbelievable. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
It's so cool to hear that, man. Like how appreciative you are. Because there's a lot of people that are, you know, I deserve this. I'm owed this, you know. So they look at it as almost, you know, I don't know how I want to say it, but you don't feel like you're owed this. You know that you worked hard and you're not going to take it for granted. You're going to love every second of it. So it's really cool to hear that genuine, you know, appreciation for this. And we all have it. I'm telling you, man, once you guys see this film, you're going to totally understand. The teaser itself gets you just amped and ready to go, man.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm so excited to watch. It's one of those things where I'm just ready. I'm ready for it to come out. I'm ready to watch it. Now I got to wait another 3 fucking weeks. I watched the trailer. Your views on the trailer are going to go up exponentially just from me repeatedly watching the teaser of it.
Yeah, do it.
So,
Saves me, gives me a day off if you do.
So I already heard from you, Rich, your favorite, because I always ask everybody about the first horror movie, but I also want to know your favorite horror movie. So I know, Rich, you said yours is Alien. Was it Alien or Aliens?
Alien. I'm
Alien.
the opposite of most people.
Yep.
I find
No,
Aliens
I
a
get
little
it,
bit
man.
on the cheesy side for me.
So, Adam, what about you? What is your favorite horror movie?
The Exorcist, hands down. It's The Exorcist. Again, like it was after the whole discovering horror via Nightmare on Elm Street. I was like, okay, what is the scariest film that I could watch ever? And I started asking my parents, and they were like, oh, the Exorcist. And I said, oh, really? Because I've seen that in the video cabinet. It's, you know, they had the VHS tape of it, the black cover, you know, with the Exorcist on the front looking up at the window. And I was like, is that a horror film? Because I thought it was some sort of, you know, crime investigation film with an inspector. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, it's the scariest film ever. And I'm like, can I watch it? And they said, nope, you're not allowed. That was the only thing that they wouldn't let me watch. So I kind of got obsessed and started any kind of friends that I would go, you know, when you're in school and stuff, oh, can I stay at his house tonight? And, you know, can I go around after school and play? There was one friend, one guy that I was friends with at school called Nick. And he said that he had The Exorcist at home and that his parents let him watch it. I mean, he was probably lying, you know, thinking about it because we were 8 or 9, but I was like, cool, man, you know, can I come around and play? Can I come around and play one afternoon? And he goes, yeah. So I told my mum and I went there and I just sat there all afternoon just begging his dad to let us watch it. And his dad ended up calling my mum saying, can Adam and Nicholas watch The Exorcist? And my mum was like, nope. But then eventually she let me watch it, right? And I fell in love. I absolutely just loved that film. And I was so obsessed that I would take my cassette tape recorder thing that I used to record like stupid like radio shows on them, pretend that I was a presenter, right? I took it to my grandparents. Yeah, I think we all did. We're from that era.
Everybody did that.
Yeah, I took the film to my grandparents' house because I used to go there often. Like every Sunday, we'd go over for Sunday roast or whatever, and I put the film on like with my uncle. My uncle's a big horror fan as well, and we sat there watching it. And I'm sitting there with my tape recorder, just recording all the best bits, so I could take it home to my older sister Rachel, who always used to watch horror films with me as well. And I took it home, and I was playing her all these bits, and I think I terrified her a bit. She was like, well, traumatized would be the right word. She was crying that night. I remember she said, why did you make me listen to that? I was like, I don't know, but I don't care because it's awesome. So yeah, it's The Exorcist for me, hands down, best film.
Well, I mean, if you look at just the stigma around The Exorcist when it came out, I mean, they were shutting down theaters. People were leaving crying, puking, having heart attacks. The story of The Exorcist is almost as good as the film itself.
Totally. Dude, check this out. I don't know if you can see clearly. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's how much I love it.
The eyes look so amazing on there.
You should show him all of yours. He's got just horror everything.
I just got horror everywhere. I don't know if you can see that. I've got Pinhead.
Oh, Pinhead.
Freddy. Well, it's upside down, but
yeah.
Freddy on my. I don't know, I'll send you some proper pictures, man. But I'm a horror freak. Horror nerd.
I've just got like stupid like Final Fantasy gaming stuff. All colourful and
That's
cutesy.
Awesome, man. If it makes you feel any better, man, I'm stuck in the world of I'm still
Futurama.
I got the music world with you guys too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So it's one of those things where a tattoo idea I'm going to get on my calf. I'll show it to you, a horror idea, but this is what the horror thing I wanted to be perfect. Something that I wanted to totally encapsulate my love of horror in general. And I think I finally found the perfect one. So I'll shoot that to you guys as well. Nice. So I got 2 more questions for you guys. We were talking about the kills. Richard, in Arachnophobia and The Blob, what are your favorite kills in those movies? Arachnophobia I know is going to be kind of hard.
Yeah,
But
like I said, the actual kills aren't that bad. It's more like the aftermath in arachnophobia. Like you find the couple on the sofa or the guy in the coffin. And I think those two kind of, I guess, count for that. So it's not so much that, but I think the best kill, I think we touched on it a little bit when we were talking about the thing, and that was the practical effects of that first kill in the, I can't remember. Can you tell me, was it the police station or is it a hospital? I think it's a police station, is it? When the guy
in
comes in and he's got the burn on him and on his arm, I think, or something, but it ends up dropping on his head, and his girlfriend's trying to pull him out of it, and she yanks his arm off, and his whole face is just melting inside the blob, and he's like, oh, and it's just
Yeah.
like horrific, but it's just amazingly done, like
Yeah.
faultless. So good.
It's awesome to watch a movie start off with a bang like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like slow burns. Don't get me wrong, but it's also so much fun to see just welcome to the film.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Adam, Nightmare on Elm Street, your favorite kill in that movie?
Well, you said it earlier, dude. It's the first kill scene with Tina in the bed. It's the way the way the cuts just appear on her stomach, and those awful retching sounds that she's making, and like only to be followed by her just floating around the room and ending up on the ceiling, and Rod is just standing there like terrified, like what the fuck's going on? And it's horrible. And again, going back to the practical, effects and stuff, how it was done so well for its time. And it's a terrifying scene, man. It's terrifying. And I kind of hold that in joint place with Glenn, Johnny Depp's death in the film, The Bed. It's just amazing. It's so good. God, I love a bit of death.
And one of my favorite things about Glenn's death is it happens, and then you get him in part 4. They kind of pay homage to it with the Joey getting sucked into the waterbed, and I love how in Nightmare on Elm Street they totally went back and redid that death by paying homage to it. Not a complete ripoff, but they paid homage to that same death of him getting sucked down and seeing him in it. So that's something that's always stuck with me as well.
That's Warriors, right? In the hospital.
No, that's 3.
Right.
Joey is in 3, but he ends up dying in part 4.
Doesn't that? Yeah, no, but isn't that where the bed gives way and there's the big hole underneath,
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
3.
He's held on. He's in the coma.
Yeah.
See, I think 3 is the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie when you get the cast and everything in it.
I have to agree with you, man. I think some of the deaths in that are like the bed. Well, he doesn't die in that, but the bed giving way, the television, and the puppet as well when he turns. What's his name? The Wizard Master. What's his name? Oh, I forgot his name, but the Wizard Master's friend. Has a room with, and he's just puppeting him, and he just cuts the thing and falls from the building.
One thing I love about that scene is how on some of them you see the tendons, but then on other scenes you don't. It's just him walking with them. And you brought up the TV, something really cool. A buddy of mine, Josh Epper, the drummer from Coheed and Cambria, he was talking about how he wants to get in his house a replica of a TV up on the wall with her face shoved through it, with Freddie still on top of it. I was like, dude, that would be the coolest thing to have just in your house.
Could you tell him that I'd love to go around for a drink then one day? Because that would be awesome.
Yeah, would that be badass?
Yeah.
So I always end these interviews with the same question. We do a skull count. We're rating 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's go with you first, Richard. Arachnophobia. Skull, 0 to 5. What does that get on your ranking?
As in good or terrifying?
Yep. 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. How you like it as a film?
I think it's a great film. There's looking back at it now, like I said, I watched it with the kids recently, and there's a lot of, oh my gosh, that's totally a puppet. You can see the stick. There's so many things wrong with it, but I still think it's great. Like, I'd probably give it a solid 4. I don't know if there's nostalgia kicking me in the face there, but yeah.
It's realistic too. It's one of those things. I love creature features, Jaws, Tremors, Arachnophobia.
I'm the same,
where you do have that, that realism to it that scares the shit out of you. I mean, getting bit by a spider really isn't out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, totally. I'm for that. Me and Adam kind of have this debate a lot of the time when we're writing. He loves more the like, what's it called?
Like the supernatural elements.
Supernatural kind of elements and that, whereas I'm like, well, I don't believe in that stuff, so it doesn't scare me. Whereas real things do, like psychopaths, creatures, things like that. They're the things that scare me because, you know, I don't go to sleep at night locking the door because there's going to be a ghost. I lock it because someone could come in and rob me and stab me or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's much more likely to happen than a ghost or a crazy faced nun or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like that. So I think there's an element there. So we always like not clashes and we argue. We get along like a house on fire, but we kind of have to try and marry the two, which comes up with really interesting ideas. And I think hosts, you'll see that in hosts that it's a marrying. Like people say, oh, this is, you know, as people have seen the trailer and gone, oh, this is just like a home invasion film. And then they see a bit more and they're like, no, it's not. There's some supernatural here. And that's exactly why, because we come from very different things. I'm really into home invasion, real kind of fear of someone breaking into your house. Adam's really into the other side. And so we have married those two into one genre, I guess.
And you don't get that a lot. You know, the realism with the supernatural together, that's, you know, two things that absolutely can work really well together. And that makes sense. You know, you're talking about your favorite is Alien, which is, you know, I don't want to say it's unrealistic because it's, you know, you watch that movie and there's that feeling of realness to it. And then you got Adam, who said his favorite is The Exorcist, which is a supernatural, you know, out of the ballpark, one of the best supernatural movies ever made. So to put that together is so cool to hear the influence there.
Yeah, totally. Like Alien, technically, you know, it's unlikely, but it could happen. You could go to another planet where there's an alien species that is aggressive and that type of thing. It could happen because, you know, animals exist and there are aggressive animals and things like that. We don't know what's on other planets. Whereas, like, yeah, the supernatural side is more Adam's type of thing. So, yeah, that completely makes sense.
So what about the Blob? 0 to 5 skulls. What are you giving the Blob?
Oh, so hold on. I really need to go back to that. I've just been waiting a little bit because the kids, like, my son is like bigger horror buff than me. Like he's basically Adam as a kid. Like he's like, can I watch this one? Can I watch this one? I'm like, no, you're too young. And then slowly we've been like, oh, okay, you can watch that. And he loves it. And especially like horror games and stuff. Like Adam, when I first got VR, like for the PlayStation, we got Resident Evil 7 and I've tried playing it and I can't complete it. I find it too scary. Adam played it. We made a short film while he was playing it. And he found it terrifying as well and got ill. And then my 8-year-old has completed it in VR and he's like, what's next? And so I was like, okay, here's the whole collection from the PS1 Resident Evil all the way up to here. He just smashes through them and he's like, what's next? I'm like, what's the scariest game I've ever played? And I was like, oh, got Dead Space. That was pretty terrifying. That gave me anxiety. Completes it. Yeah, what's next? And I'm like, dude, he's got it. So I think I'm going to watch The Blob with him in the next few weeks. I really want to try and get a hold of a copy of that. It's been a long time since I've seen it to really give it a rating. I might watch it now and go, that's dreadful. But
once you watch it, text me and give me your skull count, and I'll put it in the description. So if you guys want to know what his skull count is for The Blob, read it down here.
I think that's a good idea, yeah.
How about you, Adam? You're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. Where are you ranking that, brother?
I'm gonna have to follow my heart with this, man, and give it a 5 because of what it represents to me, man. And I explained it earlier. It's got a special place in my heart. It molded me into the person I am today, and I like the person I am. So, like, you know, it's a 5 from me. It's a 5.
The only thing that stops A Nightmare on Elm Street from being the perfect movie to me is the last 45 seconds. You know, when you see
through the door.
Yes, that's the only thing that stops Nightmare on Elm Street from being the perfect horror film. It's got, I mean, the 1-2 Freddy's Coming for You is so iconic. You know, the one-liners in the movie alone, you know, this is God. Or, you know, when he's talking to, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy, and the phone starts licking her. You know, like, to me, Nightmare on Elm Street is as close as you can possibly get to the perfect horror film with the amount of one-liners, genuinely terrifying moments, the bits of comedy. Because in this one, Freddy is still, he's dark, but he still has those little, you know, his jokes in this one, like, hey, Tina, watch this. and he cuts his fingers off, like, and then he just starts laughing. Like Robert Englund was so perfect for that episode or for that movie. I'm sorry.
100%, man. 100%.
So I do want to thank you guys again for coming on so much. Don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you guys. Everybody else, remember, please stay what you are. Times are crazy right now. Always stay what you are. Keep talking horror, and we'll see you guys soon.